If I may rewind a bit to what we were talking about a while ago, which is accountability. There's often talk of accountability in our relationships, but I was interested and indeed gratified, Nitin, to hear you talk about accountability on both sides. What might, in your view, be some of the accountability measures or parameters of accountability of the marketer in this relationship?
So I think the way I see it is, in any relationship, if it is a true long-term partnership that you're working on, it is my view that we must work on joint first. The big picture must be a shared objective that both people must have. And we do that within the organization across different functions and different brands, because there is too high a temptation at times to keep separating and segregating that this is my bit and this is your bit. And as long as we are too obsessed with I do my bit and you do your bit, sometimes we lose the big picture. I've seen too many cases where each person can demonstrate that he's done his or her bit, but the overall is not being delivered. There have been times in history of companies, and many of you might realize it, that as you start thinking of individual goals of people at the end of the year, you'd find everyone saying, hey, all of my objectives have been achieved. And then you start looking at the overall company and saying, how is it that everyone's met their goals and objectives and the company performance nowhere comes close to demonstrating or close to what that is? So my view is, if we are talking about a relationship, and a relationship which is long-term, and it is based on trust, we must have the ability to first start off with common aligned objectives which apply to both of us. Then, underneath that, there must be a conversation in terms of what role you play in delivering that outcome and what role the company plays in delivering that outcome. And I think we must have that conversation, but never ever reach a stage where these subordinate objectives take precedence over the overall larger objective. And I have seen that happen in many cases, and that's what I would tend to avoid.
Mr. Satyamurthy.
My name is Satya. I work with Lintus Media Group. What is your commitment to syndicated media research in the country? We still live with television research available only for urban India, with very little people meters and so on and so forth. As an industry leader, what's your commitment to media research?
Look, I'm not fully up to date with what's going on, but my recollection is there was some work which was going on to try and get into that space. So I don't want to say any more because I'm not up to date with what's happened in the recent past. But there were efforts to try and see whether something like that can happen. But I'm not close enough, so I don't want to comment on that.
Hi. You spoke about television sort of reaching its max pinnacle point. One of the things that FMCG companies for various reasons of the last few decades have done is not been very reliant on print advertising, right? Newspaper is a business that has been derided quite a bit over the last decade or so for the way it's gone, for not having been able to keep its stronghold in position. We've seen what's happened in the West. Newspapers are not in great shape, but India is a very different story because of increasing literacy rates, increased penetration, and so on. More disposable income. Newspapers as a business has grown quite a bit. Do you believe there's an opportunity now, given that television, as you present it to be might not be the medium of the future? There is an opportunity for FMCG companies like yours to look at print afresh and see whether there's a space to get back in.
So if I was to just clarify what I was saying, while I use television as an example, the larger picture I was making is conventional media in all forms in the future will not be the way it has been in the past. And that applies in my judgment to all forms of media as we move forward. Within that, the rate might change across different... As far as print is concerned, I have no ideology about any of this. If anyone's been able to demonstrate a business case as to why print makes better sense than something else, of course we will put in. Why would a company like ours not want to invest in any media where anyone can demonstrate that it makes great commercial sense? We have nothing which makes us incline more towards one or the other. It's just a question of a business case, and we will look at it with as open a mind as is required. So if there's new evidence, new data, there are trends which anyone's able to say, I'm sure our media partners, our channel providers, our agencies, etc., would bring that to us and we would deal with it.
Just to add to his question, and basically what he's saying, traditionally you spent very little on
No, I understand that.
newspaper.
So the point I'm simply making is, firstly, it is in a company like ours, it is unlikely that a comment like this will make us spend more. For us to spend more, somebody needs to come and demonstrate the business case of that spending, and there will be people who will assess that business case. If it makes sense, you can be sure that this company would do nothing. Why would we not do it if someone's been able to explain why it makes better sense to do so? And if you are doing so and we are not able to understand, that's a possibility, then I just urge you to try a different method, try and get us out so that we are able to see things from the perspective that you can, and see whether you are able to change that.
Just to supplement, just taking a brand that he has, Sunsilk, right? Sunsilk doesn't advertise so much in newspapers, but in Hindustan Times they did a Sunsilk, shopping guide. They did a Sunsilk fashion guide. So they did a...
No, but firstly, it's not as if we don't do anything.
No, relatively speaking.
So it's relatively smaller.
Yeah, so-
We are innovating with print.
Right.
We are experimenting in very different models. With one of our print partners, we've got into a deal which is around a joint commitment to market share movement of a given format. Now that's a very bold position for that print partner to come up with, saying, we trust us, we understand this, we are willing to actually work on the content, work on the creative, we know how people consume print medium possibly better than you do, trust us. And they then said that we would be willing to put our money on the line, saying we will jointly commit to this upside. If it moves the needle in terms of market shares, will you be happy to give us an uplift over our normal business? We say, of course we will. Yeah? And we are experimenting with that at this moment. So there are ways by which people can innovate, and I think if you are so confident, and anyone is so confident, and I like this idea because once again it moved into the space of performance and payment for performance and output rather than just inputs.
Which question?
Mr. Pranjpe, your address and your comments have been very, very insightful this morning, and I'm sure everybody here is going to take lots of wisdom back home and try and implement. My question is a little larger from just the communication piece that we've been discussing for half an hour or so. When we look at performance of Unilever in the last 18 months or so, it's begun to do very well after almost 4 to 5 years of a performance which was not so good. So what's changed in the last 18 months? What were the levers that you pressed which helped you change and have much higher shares of growth in the last 18 odd months? And more importantly, what is the future? What are the things that are you planning to do as a company at a broader level to keep this momentum going?
So first, you cannot imagine how scared I am every time I hear something like this. Yeah. No, I'm serious. I think I remind myself that we are in a FMCG business, and not to get carried away by comments like this that we've done well in the recent past and 18 months, 2 years, whatever the period is, because you could get complacent. This is an FMCG business, and it's not called FMCG for no reason. It's fast moving. If your eye is off the ball, even for a short period of time, you will be hit, and hit hard. And when you're hit hard, it takes you 6 months, 12 months, 18 months to recover from that knock. So for me, the big lesson in all of this is keep your eye on the ball, and in the larger context, it means stay close to the consumer. Obsession with consumers and customers is the only way by which we will stay ahead in the future. This is my message, number one. And number two, constantly recreating sources of competitive advantage. Because the reasons why we succeeded over the last 75 years will not help us succeed in the future. And the third thing I would say is, most leaders make the mistake of seeing their leadership as a reflection of continued competitive advantage. And there's a big shift, a big difference I want to say. I'll give you an example in 1 or 2 areas. If I was to take just distribution and access that we had, we were the pioneers in terms of building distribution in this country. We had the widest and the most intense distribution network, reached more villages, reached more outlets than anyone else. That was true 25 years ago. That was true even last year. Now the danger in all of this is you can be complacent because you are the leader. Leadership does not guarantee you competitive advantage. I would say, is the gap narrowing or is the gap expanding? If the gap between me and my nearest person was 25% a year ago, I've added 10% more outlets, but the other guy has added 25% more outlets, and the gap has become only 15% now. The gap has narrowed. Competitive advantage has reduced. Most of us are not watching gaps. And most of us are not obsessed with creating and expanding gaps. We are too happy with being in leadership positions. Leadership positions, when you're happy, I say, you are a leader, but you're not behaving like a leader. A leader, you're behaving like a leader when you're obsessed with expanding gaps which you have versus everyone else. And as long as we stay true to these 2 or 3 principles, stay obsessed with your consumers, have a point of view on the future, and start creating sources of competitive advantage which will help you address that view of the future, then I suspect that we would be all right as we go forward.
How much? So, yeah. So I must say, before I end, I have to ask you a last question, and it's more personal. I would like you to, for this audience, give us a person that is your role model, and it could be in any domain. It doesn't have to be business. It could be somebody you really look up to in current times of flux, of so rapid change. And second, a book that you recently read, if you get time to read books, apart from your market visits, that you would like this audience to read so that they can be future ready.
So I don't know, and one book doesn't immediately come to my mind, so I will duck that question. I don't know how to answer the first question because it sounds so common and it might apply to everyone out here. But I can't think of anyone, and it's not today in today's times of change, but I can't think of anyone across my life from the time I've grown up who's had a bigger impact on me, my values, my beliefs, my work ethic, than seeing my parents, my mother and father, in terms of how they led their lives and how they continue to lead their lives. All I can say is, like I said, it could be true for many, many people out here. All I can say is, hard as I might try, the standards which they have set for themselves and the way they acted, there is no way I could come even remotely close to what they've managed to do. And for me, even to continue that journey and continue to work out there is what keeps me going and inspires me in this journey. So nothing else to add.
Thank you so much. I don't have to ask you to give him a very big applause. And I must say that those of you who didn't go to Cannes, I can tell you that today's discussion was far more engaging than a lot of discussions in Cannes. Some may agree, might not agree. You might be looking at the way Indian leaders and Indian business professionals are progressing at a future leader of Unilever in the world. So maybe we'll meet you in Cannes in 3 years, and you might be sharing this session with Mr. Soren. Thank you for being at the Exchange for Media Conclave. It's been a pleasure to listen to you, and I hope all of us can apply it in our domains and be thinking and working like a leader. Thank you so much.
Mr. Batra, may I request you to honor Mr. Paranjpe with a small memento on behalf of being here, on behalf of the organizers, Exchange for Media, and of course this Conclave 2011. Yep, thanks. Up quickly, ladies. The CEO MD HUL, Nitin Paranjpe. Thank you, sir, for your wonderful presentation. Might I say that was a whopper of your presentation, and of course your presence here. Thank you for sharing your views and connecting with the consumer, not forgetting, of course, the sweet spot, but most importantly, letting us know that digital is the media of the future, and the growth in digital is where it's going to be. A small memento. Thank you, sir, for your presence, making it so very special. Thank you, Mr. Paranjpe. Thank you, Mr. Batra. Thank you, sir.